Good morning, everyone. The Motley Patriot here. So, haven't done a bedtime story in a while, so I'm going to read something today from the first settlers of Orange County, Virginia, by a gentleman by the name of Joyner, Joyner. Those of you who know of his history will certainly recognize that he is a very reliable source for information, deeply researched, and still, in spite of the substance and breadth and depth, still comes off as a very good storyteller. So I think you're going to appreciate that. Today's subject, as of no surprise, from my living room here in Unionville, Virginia, is on Robert Spotswood's son. Who might that be? Well, let me start. Robert Spotswood, the father of Alexander, was a doctor to the king's troops and married Catherine Mercer. While stationed at Tangier, a British outpost on the North African coast, Catherine Spotswood gave birth to a son in 1676. Ooh, right at Bacon's Rebellion. That's an interesting coincidence. Spotswood was born during the year of Bacon's Rebellion. Ooh, I like it. I like it a lot. Dr. Robert Spotswood died when Alexander was 11, and he and his mother returned to England, merry old England, at the age of 17. He was commissioned an ensign and served in Flanders in the War of the Spanish Succession. He rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel. In the Battle of Blenheim, Spotswood was seriously wounded, and in the Battle of Oudenarde, I'm sure there are certain people out there that will correct me, Oudenarde, his horse was shot from under him and he was taken prisoner. The Duke of Marlborough negotiated his release, and Spotswood returned to new duties in England. In Virginia, Spotswood soon dominated the colonial government and social life. Ever mindful that he was the Queen's representative, in Virginia, Colonel Spotswood, as he preferred to be called, demanded respect, and got it. Every inch a governor, he was handsome, self-confident, and courageous. He handled his duties with administrative skills and vigorous interest. Although thoroughly British, he learned to love the new land, and while circumstances led him to resign his office, he cast his lot with the colony rather than return to England, a choice which was to have profound effect upon the county which bears his name, Spotsylvania, and its firstborn, Orange County. Yay, Orange County, the firstborn of Spotsylvania, or Spotswood. Of Virginia's population, 80,000 in 1710, 20,000 were Negroes, and 1,000 were Indians. The centers of population were clustered on the plantations along the tidal rivers below the falls. That would be just below Fredericksburg. Hundreds of indentured servants worked at tasks, both skilled and unskilled, until they earned their freedom and the opportunity to make lives for themselves in the new land. That would be here. Between the governor and the governed were the two houses of the General Assembly, the council appointed by the Crown upon the recommendation of the governor, and the House of Burgesses, elected by the freeholders. The council consisted of 12 men, presided over by the governor, and contained men of prominence and ability, some of whom, though Virginia born, were educated at the better schools of England. The council also served as the general court, the court of last resort of the colony. Upon Spotswood's arrival in Virginia, the leaders of the council were Edmund Jennings, the president of the council, who, in the absence of a royal governor, had governed the colony for the past 4 years, and James Blair, the head of the established or Anglican Church in the colony, and the direct representative for the Bishop of London, responsible for the religious life of the colony. Interesting, there's a parallel of two powers there. That certainly plays out in the arc of who does what with whose permission. You've got the church, you've got the crown, you've got the church, you've got the crown, a lot of bickering and back and forth there. We all know about that English history. Anyway, Spotswood vigorously enforced the Navigation Act, requiring that all shipments of tobacco from Virginia be made to England or its colonies. Hardly endearing the new governor to the Virginia planters, he established a military hospital at Point Comfort. Alarmed by the inattention to the collection of quick rents, and of course, quick rent is what you would pay to the lord, if you will. If you own property, you still have to pay in lieu of service to said leader. Alarmed by the inattention to the collection of quick rents by the sheriffs, Spotswood proposed that for every hogshead of tobacco deposited in a public warehouse, a certificate of deposit be issued, and that this certificate should be legal tender, thus guaranteeing for the first time a stable currency for the colony. And if you look to a lot of the road orders, a lot of people that were paid for services or paid for financial occurrences or transactions, pounds of tobacco was the standard delineation. Very neat. Instead of a gold standard, we had a tobacco standard. I think I can say that off the cuff and be reasonably accurate. If not, I'm sure some of my viewers will call me out on my conjecture. But I like conjecture. I'm going to stick with the conjecture. Spotswood gave immediate attention to the reconstruction of government buildings in Williamsburg and to the improvement of mail services in the colony. Now, down in Fredericksburg, one of the first post offices, I think it's down Route 2, just southeast of Fredericksburg. I have a video on that. Perhaps I'll post a link of Spotswood's first post office. Very interesting. Again, captains of industry taming the land with the help of lots of strong backs, to be sure, but leadership and minds with vision. It matters. Much of the beauty attached to the building of the Church College of William and Mary, Bruton Parish Church, and the colonial government can be attributed to the fertile brain and administrative skill of the new governor, that of course being Spotswood. With the killing of Blackbeard and the hanging of many of his fellow pirates, Spotswood restored a measure of peace and security to Virginia's waters, thus encouraging trade. However, attacks by Indians on the frontier were often bloody reminders of the continuing conflict of cultures. To secure the frontier, Spotswood established 2 forts, one on the Meherrin River in Brunswick County, Fort Christiana, and one on the Rapidan River in modern Orange County, Germanna. See, we're so cool here in Orange, I'll tell you. And in fact, interesting, that area is the very area that's contested today. How dare we develop the land that was first developed when we were developing land? Haha. Anyway, I digress. But that area over there in the most further end of the county, over there by the Rapidan, that's over by Wilderness, very interesting land. We really look forward to the final recolonization of that land, if you will, and a lot of good hands are moving pieces to bring that back to public use, and I'm pretty excited about that, quite frankly. You drive down there on the right-hand side of Route 3, headed toward Culpeper, just as you cross into the county line. All that land on the right-hand side has pretty much been in squalor, and it's going to be nice to see the county turning that into useful land. The conversation is, heck, we might even get a nice historic Spotswood Park out there. Be sure to tell all your county representatives that you're looking forward to that Spotswood Historic Park. They're setting land aside for it. I think that'd be exciting. I'd love to see the community get involved and sort of anchor all the history of the county around that first area where we can capture revenue, where we can, in fact, tickle the ideas of history for people that have never been in the county before. And I look forward to that. And interestingly, I hear there's going to be a data center there. I think Spotswood was the original data center of 1736. There you go. The Spotswood Data Center. I like that. Anyway, I digress. It was in connection with the establishment of these forts that Spotswood first learned of the vast potential in the western wilderness. He established troops of rangers who patrolled the frontier to protect it from the Indians, and these rangers returned to Williamsburg with tales of fortune to be made and land to be claimed. To see for himself, Spotswood led a group of adventurers on a trek to the crest of the Blue Ridge Mountain in 1716, which came to be known as the Journey of the Knights of the Golden Horseshoe. because of the symbolic gift by the governor of the Golden Horseshoe to each participant upon their return to Germana. Very cool. And of course, I have a video where I do a reciting of the story written by Colonel Byrd about his visits to Colonel Spotswood. I'll also put that in the links. And there's a ghost that comes by in that video here at home. It's late at night that I do the story. And it's a very compelling, it paints a vivid picture of as if you were in Spotswood's home with his wife, and a story about a deer prancing through the living room and knocking the glasses down. It's if anybody's ever known anybody with pet deers, which is technically illegal, you'll know that they're very playful and almost like children. But again, I digress. Even before 1716, however, the governor began his accumulation of land in the area of Germana, which was to result in his claiming title to well over 100,000 acres upon his retirement from office. Clever Mr. Spotswood. As early as 1713, Spotswood had, through his surrogate, Larkin Chew, acquired title to 4,020 acres near Burr Hill. There you go, Larkin Chew. Ah, interesting. There's another name to look up. Acquired title to 420 acres near Burr Hill on the Rapidan River in present Orange County. Other surrogates acquired for the governor title to the Germana tract, 3,229 acres in 1716, although the patent of 15,000 acres in 1719. Also the patent of, 15,000 acres in 1719. The governor considered it unseemly and possibly illegal. For the governor, who approved the grant of land patents, to take title in his own name. He therefore did indirectly through friends and business associates what he could do not directly. The patents were usually followed in quick succession by deeds from the surrogates to Spotswood. Spotswood's interest in Germana derived from the presence of a profitable amount of iron. Iron ore. To exploit the ore deposits, Spotswood arranged for a group of German miners to settle in Germana in 1714, becoming the first white settlers within the bounds of present Orange County. Additional Germans arrived before 1719. Now, as a sidebar, it's quite relative. One of the interesting things is that George Washington was also involved in iron ore, the mining of iron ore and the smelting and the furnaces, if you will. And it was illegal through the levying of influence in England for the colonies to capitalize on all the presence of iron ore. And it took a while in order to get approved by the crown to produce iron. Interestingly, if my memory serves me correctly, at one time, 17% of the iron used by the crown, England, came out of Spotswood's mining efforts there in Spotsylvania County, to be Orange County, and of course you can surmise from that the establishment of iron and steel provided the materials for the guns that fought in the Revolution, directly or indirectly, and also Spotswood bringing all his military prowess and his organizational structure into the county. One could make the case that the Culpeper militia and all of the pretty serious Indian fighters and participating families and members of the Revolution were a direct result of the efforts by Spotswood. The military discipline, and just the culture of that. It's all quite amazing. You can almost tie the Revolution to Spotswood. Very, very interesting. It was at Germana that Spotswood gathered his cavalcade consisting of 50 or more persons for his jaunt to the crest of the Blue Ridge in August of 1716, a trek lasting 28 days and covering 430 miles. Fortunately, there was in the group Ensign Fontaine, who wrote down his experiences in an account which is preserved. The journey is described in the Virginia Plutarch. Ooh, that's a new, boy, these colonial words, they get me. My apologies. Anyone knows how to pronounce that, do a video on the pronunciation mispronunciation of words by the Motley Patriot on his videos when he reads books. And here we go. So this is the direct account. The journey from day to day had all the charms of a primeval woodland scenery and the scented freshness of forest air, but it was varied only by the recurrence of petty incidents. An unexpected contact with a hornet's nest and the sting of its occupants, or the hiss of a coiled rattlesnake, were the only dangers which the band seemed to have had to face. Nor did the men run any risk of starvation. On the contrary, they fared abundantly on the flesh of deer, bear, and turkey, which the rangers killed from hour to hour. The woods they traversed grew so thickly around them, and the foliage was so dense over their heads, that a distant view was unattainable, and probably not until they reached the foot of the mountains did they become aware of the nearness of the ridge. By the 5th of September, they had arrived at the crest, and here they encamped for the night. Well, I can tell you, surveying Orange County, it gets thick. And I think I wore out a machete today going through down at the far southern end of the county. But that's it. I'll go a little bit more. They descended the next day to the valley of the pastoral streams, which flowed northward along the westward base of the chain. This they had the bad taste to christen the Euphrates. Perhaps they were unaware that its exquisite Indian appellations, On its bank, Spotswood buried a bottle enclosing a formal document stating that he had taken possession of the surrounding country in the name of the king. When dinner had been finished, the first toast offered was to His Royal Majesty, and this was tossed off in champagne to the accompaniment of an explosion of musketry. The prince's health, Ensign Fontaine tells us, was drunk in Burgundy, and a volley fired, and all the rest of the royal family in claret with a volley. We drank the governor's health and fired another. We had several sorts of liqueurs, viz., Virginia, red wine and white wine, Irish Usquebaugh, brandy, stout, 2 sorts of rum, champagne, canary, cherry punch, water, and cider. Before dinner, the company had amused themselves with hunting, fishing, and swimming, but afterwards they were perhaps in a condition only to lie down and sleep. Well, I can tell you from living in Orange County for quite some time, I think Orange County still knows how to get a little hammered and lay down and sleep. Anyway, Motley Patriot bringing you stories of Spotswood. I hope this is something you enjoy. I encourage you to go out and get the book by Joyner, The First Settlers of Orange County, Virginia. There's a lot of stuff in the beginning. It really goes down and mentions a bunch of the early names of some of the early patent holders and some of the early settlers. Interestingly, it does miss a lot of the earliest pre-Spotsylvania period when Orange was Spotsylvania. There's a little bit of gap there, I believe. I haven't seen anything so far. There's no mention of Watts that I've seen, but I'm just going to confirm that. Lots of walls. Watts Mountain. P.M. Watts, all late Watts. So nothing early in the book. But I'll follow up on that. But a lot of the folks thought that the Watts were Culpeper, but they came from Stafford, early settlers, the earliest. And we'll follow up on that later. Anyway, Motley Patriot, blah, blah, blah. Get to wandering. Appreciate y'all listening. Thank you for everyone that shares and watches the videos. I really appreciate it. Love my audience. Thank you. Motley Patriot. Sayonara.